a massive untapped market of people, both in the US, but also international, who have not experienced audiobooks. It's an amazing format. There's so much to either learn or experience around it, and different emotions to feel. And it's a wonderful medium. There's also significantly more ebooks out there than there are audiobooks because, as you know, it's expensive to create audio. So that was one of our missions at Findaway, and something we want to continue to try to achieve it in audio is how do we make it easier to produce content, whether we do that directly, specifically, or find ways to bring other services and tools together to authors. We want to help the production of content.
Welcome to the Lay of the Land podcast, where we are exploring what people are building in Cleveland and throughout Northeast Ohio. I am your host, Jeffrey Stern, and today I had the real pleasure of speaking with Ralph Lazaro, co-founder and CEO of INaudio. Ralph's journey spans more than 2 decades leading high-performing teams and driving innovation, from his early career in Fortune 500 companies to joining Findaway in 2012 and helping transform it from a physical device company into a $100 million plus digital audiobook powerhouse, which ultimately led to Spotify's acquisition of Findaway in 2022. Today, together with his co-founder Blake Squires, who shared his own incredible entrepreneurial story on episode 206 of Lay of the Land, Ralph is carrying the story forward with INaudio, a spinout from Spotify dedicated to powering the global audiobook ecosystem as an independent company. In our conversation today, we cover Ralph's decision to leave Charlotte, North Carolina, and move to Cleveland to join Findaway, and the culture that convinced him that was the right move to make. The transformation of Findaway and lessons learned from Mitch Kroll, co-founder and CEO of Findaway, who shared his own story on episode 128 of Lay of the Land. We covered the acquisition by Spotify, what it was like integrating into big tech, and the launch of audiobooks to hundreds of millions of listeners, the INaudio spinout process, ultimately buying back the very business that he helped grow inside of Spotify, and what it's been like transitioning back into the founder's seat, what it's like building a new team and culture intentionally shaped by both past lessons and also Ralph's own philosophies, the state of the audiobook industry today, new competitors, new technologies, and how INaudio sees its role as the world's audiobook partner. We cover reflections on entrepreneurship, Cleveland as a place to build, and what success ultimately means to Ralph now. Ralph brings an incredible energy, humility, and earned wisdom to this conversation, and I'm excited to share it with you today. Please enjoy. Lay of the Land is brought to you and is proudly sponsored by Roundstone Insurance. Headquartered in Rocky River, Ohio, Roundstone shares Lay of the Land's same passion for bold ideas and lasting impact from our community's entrepreneurs, innovators, and leaders. Since 2005, Roundstone has pioneered a self-funded captive health insurance model that delivers robust savings for small and medium-sized businesses. They are part of the solution to rising healthcare costs, helping employers offer affordable, high-quality care while driving job creation and economic growth throughout Northeast Ohio. Like many of the voices featured on Lay of the Land, including Roundstone's founder and CEO Mike Schroeder, Roundstone believes entrepreneurship, innovation, and community to be the cornerstones of progress. To learn more about how Roundstone is transforming employee health benefits by empowering employers to save thousands in per-employee, per-year healthcare costs, please visit RoundstoneInsurance.com. Roundstone Insurance, built for entrepreneurs, backed by innovation, committed to Cleveland. So over the past few years of Lay of the Land, we've had, I think, this pretty awesome opportunity to hear the Findaway story from several vantage points, from the perspective of Mitch Kroll, from the perspective of Blake Squires, from Mike Belcito. It's just touched a lot of entrepreneurs' journeys here in Northeast Ohio, each kind of adding their own thread to this collective tapestry of Findaway's entrepreneurial arc. Mm-hmm. And today we get to continue the story with you. Someone who, not only helped write so many of Findaway's chapters, but is now carrying it forward into a brand new era post Spotify with INaudio. And so I'm just super excited to have you on today to hear more about your journey as you've reflected on it and the exciting work ahead.
Yeah, love it. Thrilled to be here. Well, those are some good names of just really amazing men. So yeah, the Findaway arc is really interesting because there's multiple arcs, and then even the people, right? I'm going to guess I'm not the last Findawayer that you're going to have on this podcast, because there's a group of us that were there sort of during my period that were on my team that are just some amazing men and women and entrepreneurs that are here in Cleveland that I think you're going to be telling their story here as well. And jokingly, one of the guys called us, we sort of looked at like PayPal Mafia, right? And what came out of that. And certainly not at that level, but we're at our Cleveland version of that. And Findaway just had an incredible team. You know, it wasn't really any one singular person or singular leader, as you've named some amazing leaders. There's others coming as well. So hopefully I'm not
something in the water, something entrepreneurial in the water there.
There is.
So having lived through the entire arc, when you step back and think about it as one continuous journey, would you say that there was like a through line of what drew you to the opportunity in the first place and what has inspired you to keep it going through on the other side?
Yeah, love that. So, and I never planned to keep it going on the other side. We thought that was like the end of that branch, and then we're all going to go plant new trees, right? But what drew me to it, so I came sort of halfway through, right? There's really two core phases of Findaway. One was, it's always been in digital media, digital content, but one was that physical device Playaway that Mike Belcito and Blake and Mitch were a part of that, you know, sort of first arc. And then I came into the second one. I was actually living in Charlotte, North Carolina. I probably unique to many of the guests on your show. I'm not from Cleveland. I'm not from the Midwest. I have no family here. But I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina. Worked typically in kind of Fortune 500. I've been in large companies for the first 10, 15 years of my career, and met Mitch Kroll along my journey. And so I came and visited Findaway because I was with a company that was sort of exploring a partnership. I walked through Findaway and I saw all these like core values scattered on the wall. I'm sure you've had plenty of folks talk about that, and the mashup wall, and felt this culture. And I remember at the end of the day, Mitch was like, "What do you think of Findaway?" And again, I had no intention of working with or for Findaway at that point in my life. I was happy in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had 3 young kids. Like, life was good. And he asked me what I thought, and I was like, "This is probably one of the most authentic places I've ever been, where you have those like these core values written on the wall, but then you meet the people and you're like, this is real. These people actually like live and breathe these values." And just the authenticity that I felt there was unique. And I was really drawn to it. And there's a whole story about Mitch suckered me into moving to Cleveland, and it was one of the best things he ever did for me. And that was a crazy decision of itself. But yeah, you just felt it when you walked in. I think that's what drew other people to it. I think that's once I got there, that drew other people in as well. The authenticity, the passion, the culture, it sort of drew the people in. And so now I get to sort of take those things I learned, take the things in that I did or didn't like, and things that I want to make my own. And then Blake sort of being with this, Blake was actually like this first arc of Findaway, and I'm the second arc, right? We actually never worked at Findaway together. I always heard about Blake and shook his hand in the hallway a couple times, but he was gone. But when I got there, and then he had always like heard about me and watched me. And so then that was kind of this interesting notion too, that like Mitch was there through all of it. Blake is there for the first portion. I'm there for the second portion. And now Blake and I are like picking up the things that we gained from that experience and like creating our own version of it and continuing it forward.
So you and Blake, I think, have ultimately made this, at least to me, feels like an unusual move, spinning INaudio out of Spotify, which is essentially buying back the very business that you helped grow there.
Mm-hmm.
And just help set the stage for, what we'll talk about here today. Take us through, I think, what that decision kind of looked like, what convinced you that this was the right opportunity to dive back into something that you guys had exited, and how you go about navigating that whole process.
Yeah. Well, I would say it's not too uncommon that like a founder is acquired, right? And then they sort of acquire back that business. It was funny when I told Mitch that we were doing this, he was like, "Well, you're doing the Dave Portnoy." And I was like, "Well, that's a little different if you know that story of Barstool, but like it's a little different because I was not a founder of Findaway, right? I wasn't a significant owner or anything of significance there. I was just, one of the core leaders and a senior executive there. So I didn't necessarily intend to do it. And we were acquired by Spotify, joined Spotify, had a blast. I mean, if you're a Spotify user today, they have audiobooks now. That was us. That was the Findaway team. They acquired us, and we helped launch audiobooks on Spotify, which is pretty awesome, right? This small team of 70 folks that joined this massive tech organization. And we've done an industry media changing thing by launching a completely new format onto the world's largest music platform. So that was a pretty amazing experience. I was there for just under 3 years. Took us about a year and a half to almost 2 years to get audiobooks launched on Spotify. And once we did that, I sort of knew, like, in my own mind, like, what's next, right? That was sort of this
Right, right.
mission that I had. I never really dreamed of working in big tech or for a big company. I'm not necessarily wired that way. And the first part of my career was in large Fortune 500 companies and experiences that they didn't fulfill me in the same way that Findaway did. And sort of having a smaller team and sort of building something the way that we did there, I knew there was something else that was for me, right? And so I was pretty open with my leadership at Spotify that at some point my time was going to sort of run through there. And I was just out exploring what other opportunities might exist, and got reconnected
Yeah.
with Blake, and we really weren't talking about Findaway. Like, we had this meeting that was just kind of like, hey, like, what are you thinking about? What am I thinking about? I had this like green book with all these ideas, like crazy ideas and things I wanted to do, and was exploring the next phase of my career. And at the end of the conversation, he made this kind of like, well, what are y'all doing with Findaway? And he meant the name Findaway. But in my mind, I knew we were already engaged in this process, because I was still leading this portion of Findaway that was
Yeah.
divested, that we acquired, was this like third-party distribution and self-publishing platform that really didn't like fit into Spotify's core business all that clearly. They valued it and thought it was really important. But I was already sort of going through a process at Spotify, like, hey, we're leading this third-party like SaaS platform for audiobooks that you're sort of like fueling and partnering with kind of your competitors, right? Even though we're helping the sea rise for all ships, and it's good for everybody. And so there was an acknowledgement there that like it was, maybe there's an opportunity to find a partner, right? So I'd already been going through that process internally to try to find a partner and getting buy-in. And so Blake asked me that, and I was like, well, actually, we're kind of going through this exploration of what to do with audiobook distribution and SaaS platform and things. And he was like, oh, I just like meant the name. I was like, no, but he's like, that sounds interesting. What are you guys doing? Right. And so I said, great. Well, as we go through this process, we'll sign an NDA and I'll get you included in the process and let you kind of explore. And if you want to throw a team together, you can do that. And so he really took that nugget while I was, making it happen at Spotify to look for a partner and explore the landscape. He sort of took that nugget and ran with it, and started like really lean in, and kept kind of calling me like, I really want this thing. I want to go back to my roots of what I did. I helped build the original form of this and then left. I think I can take this and rebuild the team and build it into something special. And so we started going through that process, and he was being included through the process. And then at Spotify, I had learned about a company called Soundtrap, which was a podcast platform that Spotify had acquired, and then actually sort of partnered and worked with the original founders to divest it back to those founders. I thought that was kind of interesting. I knew I wasn't at Spotify for the long run. And so I raised my hand and said, hey, like, the Soundtrap thing happened. Can we follow that? Can I go be a part of that? Can I join Blake? I knew I was doing that at the risk of like, they'd say no and say, by the way, like, you're basically telling us you want to move on. Like, I knew there was a risk in doing that, but I knew it was like the right time. And yeah, the stars just aligned for us in some really interesting ways. We found a great tech partner. Spotify was really interested in it. We did have to compete with some other companies for that business. So it wasn't just a slam dunk, let's give it to, Ralph and Blake. And that was a pretty strenuous period for us of sort of building a team, building funding, and going through that process. But in the end, it was a win-win for Spotify as well. And that was kind of what our pitch to Spotify was. This is a good thing for your customers, right? It's a good thing for Spotify. It's a good thing for audiobook listeners and audiobook creators. And so Spotify got behind it, and they were a great partner for us. They continue to be a great partner. And now here we are, Blake and I leading, we called it Findaway 2.0. We calling it, but it was probably better that we didn't keep the Findaway name, and now we can sort of recreate it. But those who know us know, like, it's Findaway DNA. There's a couple Findawayers that are with us, on the team. And so, yeah, it's been a fun journey. It's been a long journey. It took us well over a year to get to this like closing point. These things are never as easy as you think, but you always just kind of get to the next step and get to the next step. And then here we are.
Yeah. I mean, it is a pretty amazing journey that you've been on here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things. I mean, the same thing with my move from Charlotte to even Ohio is sort of a crazy journey as well, that I've always been someone that tries not to connect too many dots, right? There's a Steve Jobs commencement, I think at like maybe Stanford or something, where he talks through that example of like, don't connect the dots too much in your life. And just so for me, it's always been like how to create a bigger vision for my life. Like, what is my broad vision of who I want to be, the kind of person and leader and father and husband that I want to be. And obviously setting those goals for myself, but then trying just really hard to kind of look at the next one or two steps, maybe three, but not connect all of them together. Because much like the move from Charlotte to Cleveland, we picked up my family in the middle of winter, 3 young kids, and moved here to Cleveland, Ohio. And nobody in my family or really in my network around me said, yeah, that's a great idea. Like, leave your VP job at $1 billion company and go work on audiobooks in Cleveland, Ohio. And when we got to Cleveland, actually, a lot of people we met were like, why are you here? Like, why did you leave Charlotte? This like beautiful weather, booming town. Like, what are you doing here? Oh, you must have family. You must have gone to college. You must have, no. I'm here for Findaway. Like, I'm here to have this experience. And then 10 years later, right, we sell to Spotify and people are like, you did it. This is amazing. What a journey. And I'm like, you have no idea, like, the risk and the chaos and what that journey was for 10 years. It's a cool story to tell, but it was definitely a risky venture that not a lot of people around me said like, yeah, go move to Cleveland. You're going to really love it. Right.
That's the risk to
And
take.
same thing, like this Findaway thing. I didn't plan on this happening. I just knew I had this broader vision. I knew I wanted to be a CEO. I wanted to be a founder and own a business. I wanted to create my own culture and to be able to sort of own and control my destiny a little bit more. Didn't really want to work for anyone else again. And so here we are, right?
So in the formation of Findaway 2.0, I mean, ultimately in audio.
Yeah.
What did you see as the opportunity? What was convincing enough about it to you that in contemplation of, I imagine you could have worked on almost anything you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about this?
Well, it was interesting. I tell people there was a time in my life before I was leaving Spotify and people go like, well, what do you want to do? Right. And I guess it's something people always ask you, like, what do you want to do? And it's such a hard question to answer because
very difficult.
If you knew, you would just be doing it. Right. And if someone's asking you that question, then it's a hard question to answer. And generally my response, and it sounds very like genius, is I want to do like cool shit with great people, right? As like the core. And that's where I sort of get to like this vision. And I knew that in audio was an opportunity to do some really cool shit with some really amazing people. And I met, and I like knew Blake was there and we were going to create great culture. We're going to build an awesome team and treat them really well and give them fulfillment in their jobs. And I knew that we had an opportunity to continue on this business that I already kind of knew, and I already knew the things that it needed and had a good sense of what it was. And again, it was a time in my life where I was like, I'm going to go do something totally different, right? Like if you and I had been meeting a year and a half ago, I would have told you like, oh, I'm exploring this. And people are like, well, you want to do books or media? I'm like, no, I'm going to go have this new adventure, right? And something different. And it is a new adventure for me. And I'm really excited about it, but I know the business, I know the customers, I know the partners, and I feel really great about the opportunities that we have in front of us to take what we did before and take the learnings. But the landscape is very different today, right? You have more players in the audiobook space than existed before. You have Spotify Live, right? This was a market that was previously really dominated by one player in Audible for so many years. And that's what created our opportunity at Findaway is I saw that there was one dominant player and we knew like we could power everybody else, right? To then compete with that one player, and we'd service that one player as a partner. And then you have Spotify into the game now, and it's a completely different marketplace. There's so many new technologies and innovations out there today. The way people are consuming content has changed. So even we were acquired in 2021, even 4 years later now, it's a completely different market. So I get to like take the thing I already know and do some really new and interesting things in it.
Yeah. I mean, running with that idea, if an audio picks up the journey where Findaway left off, but in this very different industry landscape, from your vantage point, what is different about it compared to when you started building? How do you describe the audiobook market today? And help us paint a picture of where InAudio's role within that ecosystem resides.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I would say there's two areas where life is very different. And the first is in a post-COVID world, we work from anywhere. and we use all these online tools. And so your like ways of working is totally different. Like Findaway was a purely Cleveland-based organization. We did not hire from outside of Cleveland. That was core to us to have people being eyeball to eyeball. And we felt really strongly that innovation happened, that culture, that relationships. And we had plenty of people that would apply from, other parts of the country. And this was Mitch that really drove this, right? Him being a Solon native and really feeling passionate about Cleveland. He drove that we were all going to be here. In fact, that was part of when I first got connected with him about joining Findaway, there was this interesting moment where I sort of knew I was going to go experience my own thing. I go onto LinkedIn. It was a time where you like wanted LinkedIn recommendations. And I was like, who are all the C levels I know? I'm just going to ask them for recommendations. Mitch gives me one and he's like, hey, I'm actually transitioning our company into digital. You're in the digital space. Like maybe you know somebody. I call him back. I'm like, Mitch, I know exactly the right person that you should hire. And he was like, oh, great. Who? I'm like, it's me. And I was like, but I am not moving to Cleveland, Ohio. I had literally never been to Cleveland. I think I'd been to the state one time in my whole life. And he very quickly was like, well, then you're not the fit, right? Because we have to have the culture. The culture is built on people being here, and our ability to innovate and build something special is about being here. And he was like, just come up and visit. And he knew what he was doing because I landed off the plane and he drove me to downtown Chagrin Falls and we ate lunch in Chagrin Falls. And I'm looking around like, this is not what the rest of the world thinks Cleveland is. And that's a whole nother story of us falling in love with Cleveland and planting roots here and just loving this part of the country. And it is a hidden gem, this town. And so we love being here. So the landscape has changed in that sense. Like in audio, Blake and I are in Cleveland. We have a bunch of our team members in Cleveland. We use a co-working space here, but we don't have an office. I don't know that we ever will really have a formal office, but I've got folks on the team in Mexico and South Carolina and Florida and all over, right? And we love that. We love allowing people to work from anywhere. We love the productivity and functionality that it creates. And that's a whole nother nugget that you can dive into, the things that we've learned of creating a dispersed organization. And those were things that I learned at Spotify, because Spotify has they do have some large home offices, but it's really a work from anywhere organization. So that long-winded way of saying like the market landscape of just how you work together has dramatically changed compared to what we had at Findaway. So it gives me a whole new set of challenges as it relates to culture and building strategy and creating something new when people are not like eyeball to eyeball regularly. And then the market itself has changed dramatically because you have, any industry, when you have one dominant player, it's really challenging to innovate in that space, to do new things, because everyone is sort of, I don't want to say held hostage because no one's really being held back per se, but you're somewhat handcuffed, right? When there's one dominant player in a space in your ability to innovate, because you need to make sure that one player is fueled and fed and it's going well. So then Spotify being a dominant player and gaining the market share they have, just being live for a year, creates a lot of opportunities in the industry for innovation. There's also really interesting things going on with AI and how to use AI for productivity and how can that help creators create more. And there's also some scary elements of AI that we're protecting against being in our industry, being in a creator industry, right? That we can protect authors and protect their work and protect publishers. But also then how do you then leverage AI still to make those authors and creators, do even more and create even more? And so there's a lot of technology. There's also format evolution, right? Like podcasting looks a lot different today than it did when we were in the audiobook space. Just, the fact we're sitting here doing a video podcast now, like this was not a common thing, right? When Findaway was really
it certainly wasn't.
growth, right? And so how people are consuming content has changed. The length of which people consume content has changed dramatically. Audiobooks typically are like 10, 12-hour books, and there's a great mode for that. But then people are consuming smaller chunks of content and produced, like highly produced podcasts and like theatrical productions that you're like, what's the difference between that and an audiobook, right? And how do those things live together and interact? So really unique and interesting problems to solve today, and opportunities that maybe didn't exist 5 years ago. That's why I say like it feels totally new and totally different than Findaway did. Plus having that like 2 to 3 year break at Spotify really made this feel like a completely new venture for us.
So with all that said, what is an audio?
What is an audio? We're the world's largest audiobook distribution platform. And we sort of have this phrase that we use: we are the world's audiobook partner, right? Because we work really in all different areas of audiobooks. We work with publishers and help get their content to more places. We work with large retailers, Apple, Google, Barnes and Noble, and help them have large catalogs to offer to their audiences. And we actually give them technology. So there's parts of our business that are actually a SaaS platform that our retail partners use our technology tools as well as access to our catalog. And then we also work really closely with self-published authors, right? We really value creators and individual authors. And how do we help them both create more content, but then get their content for sale in all these places, as well as help with merchandising and promotion. So yeah, we're an audiobook platform. We have the world's largest open audiobook catalog, meaning non-exclusive catalog. We want to get as many titles as we can and get those out to as many storefronts and surfaces as we can. And so we sort of sit in that middle and service both sides in as many ways as we can, wherever that market needs us to. We want to be there, and we try to help lead them in some ways, but in some sense, we also want to know, like, where are you going? Where's the consumer headed? And try to meet them there.
Yeah. So the timing of our conversation here today is not totally coincidental in that it's only very recent that this is public and live, and you've successfully navigated the transition out of Spotify and into an audio. You mentioned just before we started recording here that you feel you're in the shoe phase.
Yeah. I don't want to claim credit for that quote. Maybe it comes from somewhere else, but our CTO, literally like 2 days after we closed on a Friday, which is August 1, which is not a great day to transition all of your customers from one tech platform to another on a Friday afternoon. And the team, kudos to the team. They were working through the weekend and did great work, but we found a way, right? We weathered through it. But then we're talking on Monday, and our CTO was like, we just need to wear this shoe for a bit, right? And that became sort of a mantra for us for the last week or two. Like, let's just wear this shoe. Let's break it in a bit. Let's see what it feels like to own and run and manage this thing. And we partly need to say that because everyone, like, literally day 2 is like, what's next? What are we building? What's the next feature? How do we grow this thing, right? And we were chomping at the bit for 6 months of this integration with Spotify. So now it's like, hey, we own this. Let's go, which is great. We've built that into the culture. That's part of the culture that Blake and I helped create. Is we're a high, fast-paced, high-growth organization. So we want to move quick always. But yeah, we're in the, like, let's wear this shoe phase and see how it fits and feels. And so far it feels good, but we're getting ready really quickly to, like, jump into a new pair of shoes and get going even faster. So
Yeah. Well,
it's
I
an
know,
exciting time. It's been really fun. It's been a fun 2 weeks or so.
I have to imagine. It's fun to just take stock of it in this particular moment. It's not often I get to do these conversations where it's as it's transpiring.
Yeah. Yes.
So you've had the chance to experience and build the culture at Findaway, and you've already mentioned quite a few times the intentionality with which you are approaching culture at INaudio. And I'd love to understand what that looks like. What is that intentionality? What you mentioned what you liked about Findaway, what maybe you wanted to do different, and you actually have that clean slate, tabula rasa, the opportunity to begin again, create a new culture. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, that's good. It's a great question. It's something I learned a lot at Findaway. It's why I was want to move my family from Charlotte, North Carolina to Cleveland, Ohio, is I felt the culture and I saw it. And I knew that we even told our friends in Charlotte, if we go up there for a year and it doesn't go well, we'll be back, right? And we actually told our friends in Charlotte we'd be back in 3 to 5 years. We'd go help build this thing and then move back and learn a ton. And, that turned into 10 and turned into this journey that we're on, which has been amazing. So, at the end of the day, culture is who you are, right? You can create all the words and core values and fun, interesting phrases and things like that, but, like, culture is who you are. So we're intentional about who we are and how we treat our team and the things we do for them. And so while I wouldn't say there's this, like, perfect list of those cultural values, I can say there are definitely things that are more important to us than others. And some of them are things I learned to Findaway and some of the things that I took on my own. But part of our culture is making sure folks are connected and have relationship. That's important to us. It's important that, like, we know each other's name. We know what we're about. We know the human side of each other is really important to me. It's something that we had at Findaway and something that I feel like have done very well at INaudio. So we take a lot of time, especially because we're not in the office together, to figure out how we create interactions and moments. We have our monthly all in. which on the surface is just like, okay, it's just like your like State of the Union coffee break all in thing. But within that all in, for example, we work hard to make sure multiple voices are heard, that it's not just me, right? Or Blake or our leadership. We try to find ways for people on the team in different roles to have a voice and speak and be seen and be heard. We take a lot of opportunity to give each other kudos or props, or I'm trying to like move this, like, let's give each other daps forward, but we actually take time in our all in to let people like express to each other their thankfulness and their gratitude. And I think it's one of the greatest gifts that you can give to somebody is to express to them that you're thankful for them and that you appreciate them. And it's one of the greatest things to receive that we overlook. And it's free, it's easy, right? And we don't do it enough to each other. So we take time to do that, because on the flip side of that, the receiving side of that, I think it's really important for people to feel valued, to feel important. And I think that comes from also owning something. So ownership is a big part of our culture, right? Like, I want everybody on our team to feel like you own something, right? And to not be lost. And we actually have a guy on our team that, it's been a chaotic 6 months or so, right? We have everyone wearing a lot of hats. We have a guy on our
I can
team
imagine. Yeah.
who we were together team the other day, and someone was meeting this guy the first time and said, like, what are you doing? He's like, well, it's really hard for me to, and it was like hard for him to express to her what he does. Now, no one would argue he's like massively impactful and he's doing a million things, but I sat with him after. I was like, hey, that's a problem. Like, let's work together to like drill this down. And so he's been working on putting a presentation together for me that we're going to use to talk through to like, what's your core focus areas? What do you think? What are things that you own? Right. And that you can, I certainly love that he's a Swiss Army knife. And I kind of entered the conversation like, he's a Swiss Army knife, like does everything and just really impactful, you know? And, but ownership is important to us. We want to feel like people own things. We want to feel like they can make a decision and they can, they have the freedom to fail, right? There was something we did at Findaway that was just like crazy to think about in hindsight, where we would have our annual kickoff every year, and we would actually list out like things we did great this year and successful at, and we would put a slide up that would say like top 10 failures from this year, and we would actually sit there and talk and say like, here are things we said we were going to do or plan to do or want to do that we failed at. And it sounds, it sounds really fun and interesting, like, oh yeah, celebrating failures, right? It's one of those like kind of cliche terms. But if you think about what in the actual moment of sitting in that room and there's something on the board that you owned, right? And it's listed, how do you think that makes you feel? But we created an environment of trust that and safety that you knew that like, I don't need to take it personally or be offended by that. I know that I'm secure and I'm safe and I'm valued here. So we can look at those failures as opportunities to learn. So every one of those failures actually also included well, we failed at this and then therefore this, right? Or we learned this, or that changed direction, or that enabled us to go do this other thing because we said, stop wasting our time on this thing that's not working. So the ownership is a big one. And you can sort of feel as I talk through these things, each one of these things like dominoes to another element of what I would call culture, which is just sort of who you are, how you operate. So you hear me mention like ownership and trust together and relationships, right? Those are the things that are critical to us. So we're really intentional about that, especially as being dispersed workforce now. Literally this morning, we're sitting planning like
Yeah.
our next team's offsite. Like, we're not paying for office space, so it's like, okay, how do we get people together more? And okay, if we're all dispersed everywhere, like let's pick cool locations to send people. We are actually doing our first one here in Cleveland because there's a lot of people that haven't been to Cleveland, and Cleveland
Right
and
on.
over is amazing. So we're gonna do one here, but then maybe in the winter we might go like Florida or somewhere a little
Sure,
bit
sure.
warmer to escape. Yeah, that's, I could talk culture and all those probably for an entire session with you, but yeah, those are some of the sort of the key points for me that matter a lot when we think about culture.
Yeah.
Actually, one other thing I sort of quickly alluded to it, but I think it's important, is not just owning, but feeling like you have impact. And this is something I said at our all in, I think 2 months or so ago, as we were leading up to this launch. I can look across our team and I can easily state for you clearly the impact that each of those people had on getting to this closing moment. And so, and I think that's unique because I've worked at large organizations and there's people that are just checking in and checking out and just doing your job, and it's not very fulfilling. But when you know that your role has an impact, you get fulfillment from that. You get joy and passion. You do better work. You work for each other. A lot of our team members, they know I have to do this work because if I don't, I'm letting my peer down, and I trust my peer and I care about them. So I have to do this work. So yeah, everybody on the team being able to make an impact is important to me. And I've actually had Findaway. I remember saying this a couple of times sitting in front of the team being like, if you don't feel like you're making an impact today on our business and the things we do, no matter what role you're in, come talk to your manager or come talk to me. Come talk to me personally. Like, everyone here needs to be making an impact. And if you're not making an impact, we got to find something else for you to do.
Yeah. Speaking of ownership and impact agency and wearing of different hats, I mean, you've now worn at least 3 very different hats in kind of this journey of executive at Findaway, employee inside a Goliath like Spotify, and now founder. And I'm curious how you personally have navigated the mind shift of those different roles, from being an executive in someone else's company to being in the founder seat yourself, and what that, evolution has been like for you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. It's been very natural. I've been really fortunate to have like good mentors or coaches in my career that helped me through those kind of journeys. And that's something that's been very important to me, even through my career journey, is following great leadership. So even if you think about my journey at Findaway, I was a VP at a large company, and then coming to work for Mitch. Mitch was very like, I was the chief digital officer in the end there, and sort of, worked very closely with him and kind of ran my own company within the company there. Right. And that was kind of by design. I mean, we literally had our own building where the digital team and the content team were operating. There was times in my career there with Mitch where he had to remind me many times, like, you own this. Stop looking elsewhere. Stop waiting for somebody else to do it. Stop. This is on you. And it sounds so simple, but I was very fortunate to have people like reminding me of that at times and telling me along the way, in the same way you are, like being cognizant of this shift, right? When I showed up there and I owned portions of it, and then I progressed and got promoted or take on new roles, and he would very much remind me, like, stop waiting for somebody else. Stop looking around at me. You own this. Go. So I've had those moments in my career. And then through this period, actually, interesting, I did not have Mitch anymore, right? Like in this period of like shifting to now founder CEO. And I had a friend suggest to me last year, actually the founder, Tim Schiegel, if you know Refinery Ventures at all, that was like, you really should explore like business coach type thing, executive coach. And I had always I just kind of always scoffed at those things. Like, I don't need a therapist. I don't need and then I met a guy named Jed Zahner, who's in Cincinnati, and brought him on as a coach. And it was a game changer for me. And that really, I started meeting with him in October. He really helped prepare me for not just, this moment, but this journey even more, of being thoughtful around that shift. And it's not to say that for me, the greatest value was that, like, I'm used to being the leader, right? And it is hard for people maybe to like tell their leader, like, well, you were wrong or did this or call you out. And I remember my first meeting with Jed, I was like, I'm pretty empathetic guy. I'm pretty quick to apologize, and, kind of bragging to him, I guess, like that I'm quick to say sorry to my family, in relationships when I'm wrong. And he was like, Ralph, usually the people, I've been doing this a long time with a lot of really powerful executives and people, and usually the people that tell me that that's who they are the least of that. And I was kind of like, what? Kind of blown away by that, but it's exactly what I needed. I need someone that was going to like hold me accountable, call out my BS, tell me the way things really need to be. And I think we all need that to some extent in our life. That's what, for me, I have friends around me that do that, or mentors or coaches, and it can be your boss even as well, that's sort of holding you accountable to who you want to be. So he was very impactful for me, like through that process, to help me. I think I would have landed here, but he certainly, accelerated and pushed me into places that I would not have thought about going, even in like my family life and relationships that I had, that then impacted me as a leader and CEO. He made me go to Blake one time, and he went through this process where he was like, I want you to go to, we were talking about like relinquishing power, giving others power, right? And not controlling and managing everybody around you. And as a CEO entrepreneur, like, you tend to be somewhat of an alpha, right? You tend to be somebody, I can be that way. Like I'm aware I can steamroll over you if you'll let me. because I'll just like go, 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 go. So we were having these conversations about like relinquishing power and giving others power. And so he made me go to like some family members and then even Blake and be like, what's some feedback? What's some things I can be doing better to be your business partner? Right. And then just sit and listen and what are ways that I've maybe to my family, like I've hurt you or wronged you in some way or something that I can be better at? What, if I was doing this, I would just be an amazing partner for you, Blake. What is that? And then like sitting and listening and not responding and not defending.
Yeah.
Really, that was my homework assignment that took me like a week or two to do because it was really hard to do.
No,
It was a
that's
great
tough.
one. I had so much growth through that. And my wife, my relationship, he made me do it to one of my kids. I have a 16-year-old daughter. So think about going to your daughter and like, trying to expel out like maybe ways that I've wounded her or hurt her or things that I've said that have been impactful to her. And those became like these like tearful, amazing moments with my daughter where she was probably the one that was the most willing to like unload on me, which is interesting. Anyway. Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, embedded within the idea of relinquishing power is related from the company perspective to giving people that sense of ownership at the same time.
exactly. Yeah. Which is hard to do. It's hard to do, it's in some ways it's delegation, right? And we all struggle with this no matter what level of leadership or management that you're in. When you know a thing really well and you can do that thing well, like giving that to someone else because you know that, you know that they won't do it as good as you. They might struggle a little bit, but when you don't delegate or relinquish power, you're holding your organization back, you're holding your team back, you're holding your family back, and you need to be able to trust other people and give them the opportunity to take the ownership and succeed or fail.
What's the most impactful learning you've taken with you from your time at Spotify?
Man, at Spotify.
Knowing there's a lot you want to do very differently from that, just given size and what that kind of organization entails. But what
Yeah.
are you taking with you from it?
Well, the thing that was about Spotify felt like Findaway in a lot of ways, just like culturally, a lot of care for people and a lot of giving and really great relationships. I jokingly had said prior to joining Spotify that I would probably never want to work in big tech because I'd experienced a lot of it. And I just wasn't drawn to it, right? There was not that there was anything wrong with it. With Spotify, though, I was working with some of the most amazing people I'd ever been around. I mean, brilliant, brilliant people. The barrier to entry in an organization like that is so high. In fact, for a lot of the Findawayers, there was a lot of imposter syndrome when we first got there. I know I felt it, and a lot of folks on my team felt it because you step into this organization of just insanely educated MBAs and rock stars and experienced people that are, I was at Google for 5 years before I got here. And I was at Facebook doing this, or I have an MBA from this place. And we're like, well, we're just 70 people from Cleveland, Ohio that like are passionate about the work we do together and want to do cool shit. Like, but it was interesting that they loved our culture too, right? So part of the learnings that were there was actually this notion of like feeling imposter syndrome, feeling like this small team from Cleveland will never be what big tech is. We're not as, functional as they are. And it took a year or two for a lot of folks and even me to sort of be there and be like, wait a second, like this is not as hard as we thought. And we are better than we thought we were. And our little like scrappy team and scrappy nature and culture driven, passion driven environment can be really effective and really powerful. And in some ways, the Spotify team was envious of us and how we worked, right? And how we functioned. So there was this interesting like mutual learning where I learned a lot from Spotify on process and organization and decision making, right? There are things that like at Findaway, we're a small team. I don't have like insights analysts, right? And people that just go find information. A lot of it is gut driven and listening to the market. And then just even when we had some like challenges in the marketplace over the course of Spotify, we had like PR people to help us out. And I remember like we had this one issue that happened last year and Will Dagus, who was my head of voices, who was one of the core team members for Findaway and somebody you're gonna have your own podcast someday because he's going to do amazing things.
Yeah.
I remember after this debacle happened, we're at Spotify and he's still at Spotify doing great work there. And he and I got off the phone. We're like, that was crazy to have like a PR team come in and tell us what we shouldn't do. Because typically it'd been like me, Mitch, and Will. Like, what do we do? How do we handle this? What do you guys think? Okay, let's talk to legal real quick and just make sure we're good, right? So I learned a lot about like process and organization, and they're just a machine, right? Everything they do, they don't make bad decisions because those decisions are so well thought out and so well checked. Now, the downside of that is those decisions take a long time to make, and the launch of things take a long time to make, but usually they're right. So there's a little bit of like, and at Findaway, we would like move fast, and we really prided ourselves on that, and that's what helped us be effective. But there's probably somewhere between like our insanely fast pace, just make a decision and go mentality, and Spotify's like moves like slow down, ask the question, get this feedback, bring in this expert, bring in legal, bring in all these folks to weigh in, and you end up usually at the right decision. It just takes more time at Spotify. But the way that they're structured and organized is really cool. I mean, even like Blake and I are putting together our like benefits package and employee handbook package, right? And things like that. And it's small startup. You're just kind of like, it's text or a Google Doc, right? At Spotify, they like take time with like designers to like design this beautiful like employee handbook, and then like your benefits package that like, it's just, I mean, it's a Google Doc, but it was like designed. So
Right.
Blake didn't understand that. He kept wanting to get the handbook out. And I'm like, no, like this needs to be great. He's like, why do you need to be perfect? It's for a couple people. Like, let's go. And he's in startup mentality, right? He's in go, 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 go. And I'm in like, well, let me just give this to our designer and let our marketing person look at this. And like, let's just take a little bit more time on this to make this really nice handbook. It's only going to like a really small number of people, but in my mind, it was like, I want to do that really well. And sure, it was a little extra effort that, I think it was worthwhile in the end, and I think Blake liked it in the end too. But I picked up so much at Spotify. I'm really fortunate to be able to have had that experience as like an entrepreneur now, to like kind of been in this semi-entrepreneurial environment and find a way, right? Even though I wasn't like an owner, founder or whatever, but, and then go have big tech and see like, they just kick ass at everything they do. Like, okay,
Right.
take that. And then,
No, it like expands your quality barometer.
yeah,
Shows you.
yes. Far more quality now too. So,
Well, we'll run with the maybe wearing the shoe analogy for a bit.
okay.
And as you're getting comfortable with it, you mentioned, in the market for a new pair of shoes. What does the journey ahead look like? How are you thinking about, as the world's audiobook partner,
Mm-hmm.
how do you get there?
Yeah. It's the interesting thing about our phase, right? We sort of acquired a business. We didn't start from scratch. So we have revenue, we have margins, we have customers. So it's a unique storyline in our sense that like we bought a thing that exists. And so job number one for us is actually to look at this thing and build some efficiencies and optimize it, not just for ourselves, but for our customers. So there are ways our customers use our platform that, and this was sort of the impetus of like moving it outside of Spotify as well. Is like, it wasn't really a core strategy for Spotify to be servicing these other, partners. So it was really hard for me internally to get like significant investment in it, because Spotify is doing all these like massive world changing things. Right. And so the initial step for us is like, what type of optimization can we create today to get this thing really running efficiently for us and our team, but then also for the publishers that use it, the authors that use our services, and then the external partners, the retailers that use it. So we're going to spend a few months doing that while we're looking for some low hanging fruit and building features. And then we have a bunch of brainstorming that we've been doing around different features that we know can be game changers for, those customers of ours, and sort of listening to their needs. The great thing is we were very much we built this company in a relationship business, right? We know those publishers very well and have great relationships, and same thing, the authors and the retailers and library providers that we work with. So we feel really comfortable asking them like, what do you need from us? What have we been doing poorly? What can we be doing better? And so they're chomping at the bit for that too. They're excited that we're willing to like go all in and really invest and purely be an audiobook platform for them. And so they were really excited about this change as well. And it also helped. Really, they're excited more from the sense of like, we're independent now, right? You can imagine it was strange for like Apple or someone to be going to Spotify like, well, we want this new feature. Can you do this better for us?
Yeah.
And now that I'm an independent platform and I serve all those parties, Apple or whoever it is, Barnes and Noble is a big provider for us, or big partner of ours. They can come to us and say, hey, like, we really want this new feature, this thing. Can you help us? Or how are you thinking about, digital voice narration and AI content is a really hot topic today.
Yeah.
And then how do you think about, international content and foreign language and then format evolution? So there's no shortage of things for us to do. First and foremost is like make this thing optimized and really run efficient. Because we have an existing business with an existing customers. That's different than maybe like an entrepreneur that's just purely like starting from scratch.
No, absolutely. If if success is simply framed as, doing great shit with great people,
Yeah.
you have success in abundance already.
Yeah, man, for sure. I feel it. Why I'm smiling. I think the team feels it too. So, yeah, but I want to do more. One of the things Mitch used to always say is we're happy, never satisfied. And I certainly carry that mantra forward. So I'm really happy with where we are, but not satisfied. There's tons of other really interesting things we can be doing and ways we can grow. And so I'm a big believer. We have a high growth mindset, and we're going to continue to drive growth and not just be happy with what we have today.
Yeah. I feel that really captures the spirit of Mitch, actually. I didn't know
Yeah.
that phrase, but I feel like every time I come away from talking with Mitch, my bar for ambition is just raised.
It's crazy, right? I just spending 10 years with him, right? It was a pretty amazing journey for me. I took so much away from it. Yeah, I have like a book of Mitchisms, right? That I could share. Just all his crazy phrases and visuals and off the wall sayings. But I'm littered with ones like that are just sort of things I heard Mitch say over and over that were ingrained in me and are a part of INaudio.
Yeah. What's it like working with Blake again?
Well, I didn't work with Blake actually originally, right? I was never
Right.
there with him. So there is this, it's been great. Blake and I are really, really good partners for each other because we do cancel out each other's weaknesses in a lot of ways. We are very similar in our like belief system and values and the importance of culture and things. And that was what really drew us together. It was like, oh wait, we both believe this. And it was funny. I was not there with Blake previous at Findaway. So a lot of Findaway's culture, in my view, was like Mitch driven and created. And certainly that was a big part of it. And then I had my version of like Findaway and our senior management team, which was also very different than what it was when Blake was there. And so I had my version. And then getting to know him more was like, oh my gosh, you have this like totally other version of Findaway that was guys like Belcito and just this Christopher and this other group of senior leaders. Still similar values and so many things aligned in the culture that we're saying, but also very different because we were in a different environment. My period there was really more about this transformation to become a tech company, right? And it was about building the tech team and downloadable and streaming. And we went all in early on AWS. We were really early on. That was one of the big decisions that we made. Had a gentleman, Rob Tandy, another brilliant Findawayer, who came to me kind of early on in cloud storage and was like, we went to Amazon reInvent. There's this thing and we could stop using local servers in Cleveland Heights and we can move this whole thing to the cloud and then we can power everybody. And it sort of steamrolled. And that was one of those decision points that helped us get to where we were. So, but Blake's a great partner. We're very complementary to each other. And I didn't dream. It's another thing. I never dreamed about having a partner, really. I never intended to have a partner. I felt strongly that like I'm a pretty strong personality. I know what I want and I want to just go do it. But that's been a great, it's been great for me. We do have two other partners in the business with us who are kind of own our tech piece of our organization. And they're a Midwest company, Minnesota, based in Minnesota.
Yeah.
They're kind of global, but a company called Tarmac.io. And the two founders of that are along with Blake and I. So there's really four of us. There's really Blake and I that are kind of the more the face and kind of founders of this thing. But we brought them on as partners as well. And yeah, they've been so massively impactful. Their team has been amazing. We really like took their team and kind of folded it into our INaudio team, which has been awesome. So they're kind of a part of our core team and part of the culture.
Yeah. So if audio is able to achieve everything that you envisioned for it, both, short-term optimization, long-term growth, what does the audiobook industry look like? And what is INaudio's role at that future state?
Yeah, that's good. Well, there is so many people that have still not listened to an audiobook or are not consuming audiobooks, and Spotify has definitely been changing that, which has been great. I don't usually, so I'm a product guy at my heart, and I don't love when people use like personal anecdotes, like my mother-in-law listened to this, or my aunt did this. But my example is my wife, who never listened to audiobooks. We launch it on Spotify, and she's like, "Oh, I'll do it for you. You're listening," and she got an email about it, and then she was like hooked on audiobooks, and then all her friends were listening to audiobooks all on Spotify. And
Yeah.
she's someone that's predominantly listening to music, didn't even really listen to podcasts, saw it on Spotify, obviously felt an affinity to me launching it, was like, "Oh, let me just try this out." Next thing you know, like her and her friends are like hooked on like audiobooks that they're constantly listening to. And I think that story is really common. That's not an anomaly. And I think there is a massive untapped market of people, both in the US, but also international, who have not experienced audiobooks. It's an amazing format. There's so much to either learn or experience around it, and different emotions to feel. And it's a wonderful medium. So I feel really great about there being more listeners out there. There's also significantly more ebooks out there than there are audiobooks, because, as you know, it's expensive to create audio, right? It's expensive to create an
Yeah.
audiobook, and audiobooks, to be of value, like, they really should be produced, right? And have either an actor, right? And someone, and a producer. And so it can be fairly expensive. So that was one of our missions at Findaway, and something we want to continue to try to achieve it in audio, is how do we make it easier to produce content, whether we do that directly, specifically, or find ways to, you know, bring other services and tools together to authors. We want to help the production of content. We also think there's a format evolution that will continue to take place that would be interesting as well. I mean, I'm not sure if you remember a time where there was like abridged and unabridged audiobooks, and they made
Hmm.
shorter versions of audiobooks on
Yeah.
DVDs, right? If you didn't want to have like 20 DVDs, there was like this like shorter version that was like 7 or 8. And it'd be interesting. That's one of the things we look at. Like, is that,
Yeah.
that come back around, right? Could this notion of like condensed books and storytelling, or chapterized content? So we'll see. I think there's no shortage of opportunities. I still think there's tons of growth opportunity in audiobooks. And obviously we believe that we're leaning in heavy on it. And there was a decision that Blake and I had to make when we called ourselves In Audio. It was like, all right, buddy, like, we are going all in on audiobooks. And that means we're not doing ebooks, right? We're not doing this other thing. We're not, we're an audiobook company. Are we good? And we're like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's go all in.
It must be pretty exciting to be working towards that end at a period of time when the barriers to production of audio at that quality are just falling as precipitously as they are. When you think about like synthetic narration and all the AI stuff, I mean, the barrier is just getting very low.
Yes, which is great. And more
Yes.
content is better. More people being able to express their creativity. You look at how podcasts have grown and how easy it's become to be able to create a podcast and share your story. And I think everybody has something meaningful that they can share, whether that's through art form and sort of storytelling, or whether that's from even just sharing your own story and experiences. And we do that already all day in social media. And so that's evolved into podcasts. And now I'm really hoping that will continue to evolve in audiobooks. It already has in book form, right? There's the number of self-published authors and the ease of writing a book and creating an EPUB. Again, that barrier is so low. It's very inexpensive, if not free in some places, to be able to create an EPUB. And I don't think audio will be free. Well, maybe, who knows where it's going to go, but
Yeah.
the barrier to entry is lowering, and that's only good for us because it helps create more content. And then it's really about helping consumers get exposed to it, which is really the role of our partners, but we want to find ways that we can help them do that as well.
I want to reintroduce here the topic of Cleveland and what the significance of building in this place has meant to you as someone who is not from here.
Yeah.
I, like myself, who's kind of here on their own volition, who gets it from both sides. Like, you know, what are you doing here? Talk to us a little bit about, the what it's been to build this here.
Yeah. Cleveland has wrapped its arms around us, and we've wrapped our arms around Cleveland. We have just loved being here. It was very unexpected. We sort of came here reluctantly, as I said. Like, Mitch convinced me to come up, and I was like, "Well, give it a year." Like, what's a year? Well, just and then thankfully I have a wife who's an adventurer and kind of down for anything as well, and she's my partner. There's no just decision that I make. We made this decision together to come up here, and we had 3 kids under the age of 4 when we made that move. there was 2 feet of snow on the ground in January 2013. And I think when we got here, it was not like below 20 for like our first month or so here. And we were like, what did we do? Right. And leaving Charlotte. And we learned quickly that like people in Cleveland don't really like go outside, right? When the weather's not great and you're sort of like inside, and we didn't know where to go and what to do. And then May came around and the sun came out, and then all of a sudden, like there's people everywhere. And people in Cleveland, like really when the weather's nice, we get out and get into it. So Cleveland has been a wonderful surprise for us. So much so we chose to plant roots and stay here. Right when Findaway sold to Spotify, there was a moment where we had always dreamed of living in the mountains. Our family had land in Montana, and we wanted to be in Utah or Colorado. Like early on in our marriage, we always said that we wanted to be out west, or closer to mountains, Western North Carolina even, or something. And I remember sitting with my wife, like, okay, we're owned by Spotify. I can live wherever. Like, where do we want to go, or do we want to stay here? Like, just let's consciously choose to be in Cleveland, because previously it was really Findaway driven that brought us here.
Yeah.
Right. And we wanted to be a part of Findaway, so we chose to be here. But it was this moment of like, we're here because we want to be here and we choose to be here. And it was a really quick and easy decision for us. Like, we want to be in this town. While the weather is challenging during the winter and the gray periods, I challenge you to find a better place for weather in the summer and fall than Cleveland, Ohio. I think this is a really special place to be. And those that come here know. And when we moved here, we had people from Charlotte come visit us. And I remember in that first couple of years, they'd visit us and they'd look around and be like, wait, you're not leaving Cleveland, are you? And we're like, oh, we really like it. And then professionally, there's this interesting notion here that I really like. I feel like it's a competitive environment professionally here, but I think there's also this like rallying cry that like Clevelanders and Midwesterners, we're kind of in this together and want to support each other. And I had not seen that type of like the type of rallying around a city and a region that I feel here in Cleveland. That I grew up in Washington, D.C. My wife was from Atlanta. I spent a lot of time in New York and San Francisco. Right. And there was a while with Mitch, I was always telling him like, all right, once we get big enough, we're gonna have a Palo Alto office and we're gonna be out here. And then I would spend time out there and see like how competitive and combative and cutthroat things were.
Yeah.
And again, it's competitive here. So I don't this isn't just this like wonderful rainbows and sunshines, feel good type place, but it felt like there was more support here and connectivity here. I also feel like there was easier access to things here, right? That are harder to
Yeah.
gain access to in this large city where everyone's competing for a thing. You can meet business leaders here. You can meet folks with capital here, right? And things are just more accessible. And the cost of living here is great. I mean, I'm thrilled with being here in the Midwest and love it. Another thing I never would have dreamed. Goes back to like the connecting dots. I would never have predicted to be in this moment and say what I just said to you about the city of Cleveland and the Midwest. But it's how I feel, right? And it's how I feel today. And I'm so thankful for the journey.
Yeah. Well, it certainly resonates. We'll work to, I think, bookend the conversation from here. Before we get to our closing question, I just kind of wanted to ask, in reflection on the whole journey kind of writ large, is there something that feels particularly important that we didn't talk about yet that you want to bring up?
Man, we've hit a lot of great topics today. There's a lot on and on about culture and such. No, I mean, I would say one of the things that I sort of quickly referenced to you that I think is really important, and I know a lot of your audience is entrepreneurs or people that are trying to find their journey or figure out what's next for them. And I get asked a lot, like, what is your career path? What do I need to do to like follow your career and get to where you did?
Yeah.
And should I go to this school or should I go work for a large company or small company? And for me, it was really clear. My journey is littered with great leadership, right? So I always chose to follow leadership over money and in this case over location, because I was not dreaming of moving to the Midwest. But I met Mitch. I saw the culture he built. I wanted to learn from that. And I'm somebody, there's sort of two pieces of that. The first is like following great leadership marked my career. I can go all the way back to my first boss. And I've always had great leaders who cared about me, who wanted to invest in me, who wanted me to be successful. I wasn't like competing with them or trying to overstep them or playing political games, because I knew they had my back. So I worked really hard to do that for people around me. And really, as I tell other folks, like if you're struggling with your career or trying to figure out what to do next, like find a great leader to follow and do whatever it takes to follow that person. Because I have taken massive pay cuts throughout my career a couple times over to follow great leadership, and that had a big impact on me and how I got to where I was. So
That also resonates quite a lot.
yeah.
Well, I'll ask then our traditional closing question, which is for a hidden gem in Cleveland.
Hidden gem in what way?
Something that other folks should know about that maybe they don't. And you mentioned Cleveland overall as kind of a pleasantly surprising place, maybe because a lot of people don't know. People's perception of what it is pretty far removed from your lived experience here.
Yeah. Probably the hidden gem for me, and one of the reasons we love it here, is just the landscape, the parks, the hills. I live up towards like Chesterland area, and I moved
Yeah.
to Falls when we got here, and just I'm drawn to kind of that small town, cozy feel, kind of out in the country, kind of in the hills. And I live up in Chesterland, in a hilly area, and we go hiking and go through the woods, and I just never thought that Cleveland looked this way, or Ohio did.
Yeah.
My kids go to school down in Cuyahoga Falls, and we go down there and go to the parks. And so I don't know if that's a hidden gem, because I think people that are here know about that. But I would say if you're not here, especially, you probably had no idea that the gem of a place this is, like the natural beauty, the views, the hills, the forests here. It is a really special and amazing place, and it's what drew us here. One of the things that drew us here is just the natural landscape and beauty that exists. And because you're just, Cleveland is known as this, I won't repeat all the things that we know have happened here previously, right? On the rivers and downtown and things like that. But it's outside of here, it's known for things that are different. I think that's changing though. I don't know if you've heard the Jameis Winston interview that he did last year, where he said sort of what I had echoed as well, that this is one of those beautiful places on the planet from May to October. And he actually references in his quote, driving through Sugar Falls.
Oh, wow. No, I'll have to check
Oh
that.
yeah,
that
I'll send it to
interview
you
out.
after. It's a great quote from him, of talking about the landscape here. And it's something that I didn't expect. Is how we've brought our friends here and family to visit, and everybody loves coming to be here and be a part of it. So
Yeah, right on. Love that.
yeah.
Well, Ralph, I just want to thank you for taking the time to reflect here on the journey. Congratulations on the launch officially of INaudio, and
Appreciate
very
it.
excited to follow along on your journey and where you take it.
Thanks for having me. Happy to have been here and been a part of this. I actually do have a thank you to give you, because most of our team, interestingly, has been found with referrals. As I look back on like the 30 or so folks, which has been, I think, kind of interesting. It speaks to what we were talking about earlier about like culture and talent and people being drawn to people.
Yeah.
We certainly have jobs posted and people that have that are applying and such, but it's been interesting how many people we found on our team that were, a job opened up and someone on our team be like, I know somebody that can do that. And you got to hire this person. Or even like people at Spotify that knew us that said, hey, I have a friend, living here. She'd be great for this. You have to hire her. Right. And that happened. One of our key employees came in that way. But we do have one person who's one of the few non-referrals, and he heard Blake on your podcast a few months ago, was intrigued by Blake, loved listening to his story, started following him on LinkedIn. Blake announces the deal on LinkedIn, and this guy immediately applies, and we hire him for the team.
Wow.
Which was awesome. And he's a total rock star, just in a great place in his career to kind of come be a part of the team. But yeah, we only found him because he heard Blake on your podcast, started following along with Blake, and then applied to our company. And he's been very impactful, big part of our team. So
I appreciate you sharing that. That brings me a lot of joy to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the network you've created. I mean, I'm friends with various folks you've had on the podcast, and I love what you're doing and how you've sort of built this expanding network in Cleveland and sort of connecting people together. I mean, Fred DeSanto is one of our, and his son TJ, which is really fun to have this like father-son duo. They're sort of part of our network and are an investor in what we're doing. And so, I know you've had him on here before, but yeah, that's been fun about sort of realizing here in Cleveland, the network that's created, and people want to help each other. Right. And that's been great.
They certainly do.
Fred have been a huge part of what we do.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It means a lot.
Yeah. So you're making an impact, right? In your own way. You're impacting all of us. So it's great.
Appreciate it. If people had anything they wanted to follow up with you about, learn more, use the product, where would you point them?
Yeah, I love it. You can go to our website. If you're, an author, you can go to Voices by INaudio and actually upload your book. And we have all kinds of tools there to help you create an audiobook and get your content for sale in more places. If you're a publisher, retailer, or want to do business with us, just go to inaudio.com. If you're interested in connecting with me, LinkedIn, socials, and all that kind of stuff, I'm right there and happy to connect, happy to help folks out there. That's been a big part of my journey, and actually something I heard Fred talk about on your podcast as well, is this notion of just like connecting people. And that was one of the things that he talked about that really resonated with me as well, is I find joy in just like connecting people and connecting opportunities, and knowing that those things kind of come around and come circle. But like, if we're all just kind of connecting and helping each other, good things are going to happen along the way from us in various ways. And he echoed that. And that was one of those that really resonates with me. So yeah, anything I can do to help you, help your audience, happy to do that, and love being able to like help facilitate and play that role for people.
Yeah, no, it is interesting you brought that up, because it is something that I specifically carry with me from that conversation with Fred, because you never know, like maybe it comes back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but people find jobs, people find funding, people make friends.
Yep. I'm trying to teach this lesson. I have a 14-year-old son, and he wants to be an entrepreneur. And it's a lesson I'm trying to teach him at 14, because I've been very fortunate. Like, he's met some very powerful, influential, successful people. And he's a 14-year-old boy. Like, he doesn't know any different. He doesn't care that this person that he's interacting with, and he has no clue, like, some of the people that he's been able to interact with that like entrepreneurs or business people would like dream of being able to connect with. And so I'm trying to help him learn that as well. We can learn that at any age. It was something that I learned. Was given the book How to Win Friends and Influence People when I was a kid. And it's one of those books that like probably had one of the most impactful books on my life in that sense. And it was all about, relationships and how you treat people and how you get to know them. I'm trying to even just help my 14-year-old son realize that, like, these people you're interacting with, like, it doesn't mean anything to you now because you don't need anything, but you never know. You might need something later, or there might be something that they know about you that they saw in you later and they need you. Right. And so, yeah, it's a big part of, and I think it speaks to kind of the Cleveland Midwest vibe that exists here, and sort of what you're helping to create as well.
What's your favorite audiobook?
I get asked that question like way too often, and that's not a fair question.
I know it's not a fair question, but I felt like remiss to not ask at all.
I know. I should have told you don't ask me that, because people. No, I'm kidding. There's so many good ones. I tend to listen a little bit more like business inspiration. I like audiobooks that I can kind of listen to over and over again. There's a book called Obstacles Away by Ryan Holiday. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's part of the whole like Stoicism. Daily Stoic, movement. I love books like that because I can just kind of play it over and over, and it doesn't matter where I put it. And it's kind of thing that can get me, hyped up and in a good place. And it's sort of short tidbits. So that's probably one of my favorites. How to Win Friends and Influence People was like, you should sit and read that book, because that was just so like impactful to me. But yeah, Obstacles Away, Ryan Holiday's probably one of the ones high on my list that like you have to listen to. It's a great audiobook. So
yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap it there. Thanks, Ralph.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. So if you have any feedback, please send over an email to jeffrey@layoftheland.fm, or find us on Twitter @podlayoftheland or @sternhefe, JEFE. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please reach out as well and let us know. And if you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or on your preferred podcast player. Your support goes a long way to help us spread the word and continue to bring the Cleveland founders and builders we love having on the show. We'll be back here next week at the same time to map more of the land. The Lay of the Land podcast was developed in collaboration with the Up Company, LLC. At the time of this recording, unless otherwise indicated, we do not own equity or other financial interests in the company which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of any entity which employs us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.